This actually sounds like a very easy question. Is it harder to make money or is it harder to keep money? Because most people will automatically assume it is much, much, much harder to make money. And I'll tell you a little story just to build this out. When we first started investing in very early stage companies, we never imagined, we thought it would take years till we reached any kind of liquidity events. And then we hit this year. And we have one company under acquisition that we could hit 100 million on. We have another 3 companies which are all 50 million hits. And we suddenly realized, wow, that 100 million is actually only 60. And when you take that 60 after the first bit of tax that's going to smash you, you're then going to hit with tax. And we're not even talking about inflation and everything that happens. Like, we need to understand before starting this panel that the design of money is for it to disappear. Okay, so I really want to look in and dig into every tax tactic, every way that people can think of as far as helping you all, because you're all going to reach this position where either you're trying to make it and you want tactics to make it, or you want to save it and make sure you build it for future generations. So, without further ado, and with less from me, can we start with Olga and maybe work down through the panel, a minute on yourself, a little bit about your background, and then tell us for you the most significant thing you know. Firstly, are you a money is harder to make or harder to save? And the most significant thing you know about whichever one you choose. You following me? Wonderful. Welcome, Olga. You're good. It should be live already.
Just like,
okay. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. My name is Olga Sorokina, and I'm a lawyer by my background, M&A lawyer. But last 15 years, I'm more focused on elaborating family succession strategies for my international clients. So, and as you probably know, according to Harvard Review, it's expected around $80 trillion to be transferred during first other 2 decades. So it will be the biggest transition of capital during the whole history. And the big question is how much from this wealth will really achieve the second generation. And if we are talking about all kind of research made by Deloitte or UBS, normally the figure is very disappointing because it's only 30%. And normally what family offices were doing before, because what's really its succession strategy? Normally it was about investment performance. It was sometimes about legal structure or tax structure. It was about efficiency of investments. But is it really a most important problem in family capital transfer? Why the family are losing 70% of their capital, it doesn't achieve the second generation. In my opinion, the problem not about lawyers who work not very good and elaborate some bad tax scenarios or legal scenarios. It's not about market. It's not about bad business partners. So normally it's because families do not want to have difficult conversation inside of them. So according to my experience, actually here I have one unfair advantage because if you ask lawyers to share their experience, normally if they start sharing details about some cases, they are either inventing stories because normally you cannot disclose the client's case. It's very sensitive. Even if you have everything published in media, if someone tells you details about particular case, so most probably it's a break of NDA. But I have my story because I have
I want to come back to your story. So what I'm hearing here is 70% of all wealth that's going to be transferred down will disappear before the next generation are finished with it. That is a Greek tragedy. And you are saying that that's not because of the tax strategies. That is because that the people it's being passed to are not properly prepared. I want to save it because I want to come back afterwards and really dig in to some tactics that you have about how we can fix this, okay? Thank you so much, Olga. And I want to bring up Gordon. Tell us a little bit about yourself. We're going to dig in, by the way, Gordon is a fascinating gentleman, and we're going to dig in a little bit more in a fireside chat later on, but maybe just a very brief introduction and then talk about the subject.
My name is Gordon Curtis, for those of you who don't know me. I run a family office down the street in Lugano. It's not very far from here. I used to come here for cocktails, as a matter of fact, in the afternoons when I was actively coming back and forth. We're down to one employee. I'm glad in this local area because they don't come to work very often. But the long and the short of it is that we happen to be in a place called Campione d'Italia. And before my time, they figured out that this little strip of property that's across from Lugano has no tax. And the reason it has no tax is not because it isn't a taxed area, because it's technically in Italy, but the Swiss provide the infrastructure. So it's a Mexican standoff, whereas one group won't let the other tax it. And so therefore, there's about 100 meter by 300 meter area that is a no tax zone. So that was my first introduction to, boy, that you can have a whole bunch of wealth that you preserve by not having to pay tax on it. So we've been able to take advantage of that. And of course, we also bought a money changing license, and most of you don't know what that is, but it's sort of like being your own bank because you get your own SWIFT code. So you can send money as long as you have a correspondent bank to work with and you don't have any KYC, which makes it easier to send money internationally. So that's kind of my intro to things, but I'll say one more interesting thing about what I've learned over the years. A long time ago, I hate to say how long ago it was, I had a friend of mine and myself, we were down at a local boat club, and we were looking at a whole bunch of sailboats out there, and their boats, the bottoms were all dirty. It was the end of the season. And we looked at each other saying, you know, we could probably start a business here in cleaning boat bottoms. And what do we know about boat bottoms? Absolutely nothing. But it was towards the end of the season, and you kind of figure, well, there's got to be an opportunity. So we decided, we went to the local print shop, we printed up a bunch of flyers, and we put them on all these boats with dirty bottoms saying, hey, sign up a contract with us for next year to clean your boat bottom. We'll do it, you know, once a week or whatever it happened to be. Well, we got like 100 people that wanted to sign contracts with us. By the way, we were 13. Right? So we had no idea what we were doing. I was like, boy, we got a good business here. So I went to my father and I said, Dad, I don't know how to scuba dive, but would you pay for me to go to the YMCA to learn how to dive and buy me scuba gear, and I'll pay you back? And he looked at me and goes, well, how are you going to pay me back? And I said, well, I basically got a factoring going on here where I've got these contracts next year where I'm going to have all these boat bottoms to clean. And my friend did the same thing. Well, the next year we did $18,000, and this is in 1970, worth of work. And you think about, for two kids, 13 years old, to do that, but it was sales first as opposed to anything else, because what did we know about cleaning boat bottoms?
So making money, first of all, tax-free areas. You live in Puerto Rico, you understand how tax works. I'm guessing you don't love tax.
I love to pay for things that benefit people, not necessarily that benefits government.
And for people to direct it who actually know how to benefit
where you
people.
want to send it. We
Hallelujah.
give so much away, and we love to do that. But it's part of the reason that we do live in Puerto Rico, and we're going to be ending that soon for other reasons. But the long and the short of it is that you give it your pleasure and for the things that you want to support, not pissing off money for things that are just ridiculous. And, you know, you're never going to get away from some tax every time you buy gas or food or whatever else.
Incredible. And second point I'm taking is easier to make money than to keep the money. You can make it, you just have to make sure sales comes first. I love it. Thank you so much, Gordon. BD, easier to make money or lose it?
Sure. I'd like to say thank you for Anthony, Dushan, and the G5's team for putting on a great event, as well as all the moderators. It's been a great journey. Just a quick background, BD, my full name is Badawi Fahad. I go BD for short. For the last 20 years, I've been in Silicon Valley. By design, I actually spent about 25 years designing chips, not the potato, the microchips. And I actually exited technology, became a full-time investor in 2019. When it comes to answering your question about what's harder or what's easier, I'm gonna say it's a matter of perspective, which generation you're speaking with. If you're first generation, you're really saying, hey, how could I become wealthy? And that's gonna be the center and the focus of your attention. So that's the hard problem that you're trying to solve. When you speak to a second generation, you're like, hey, we have wealth, how do we protect it? So I think the biggest challenge typically for the second generation is to figure out how to protect the wealth. And then typically if you make it to the third round, it's like, okay, how do I actually use this wealth into doing good into the world? So I think every generation in a family office, regardless of where they are, have challenges. I mean, they still need to know how to invest it. But at the end of the day, the main thing about the hardest thing they have to do probably lies into how to make it, how to protect it, and then how to actually use it to do good with it.
Yeah, and you're kind of going back to Olga's point a little bit, where how can we possibly expect a generation of people who have never had to do anything as difficult as what the previous generation has done to be able to manage it in the same way? Like, how can we possibly expect them to have the same respect for that money? Okay, great stuff, BD. Hadi, thoughts, please. I mean, does Hadi have to do an introduction? Do we know? I think we know
I don't
Hadi,
need
right?
to make an introduction. But my partner, Anthony, put me in a session before lunch. I was hungry. And now he put me in a session after lunch. I feel sleepy, siesta. So the difference between most of the world and our part of the world, especially in the Gulf, we give, the government give, they don't take. So there is no taxation except the VAT between 10 to 15%. So I was sitting in a table with some friend there, one of them from Ireland, one of them from Norway, and one of them from Britain, talking about something very interesting, leakage of water. How can they save the leakage of water? So I told him, Bahrain is the country you come and set up your business. There is no taxation, and there is 3 organizations in Bahrain. Government will help you to empower your business. First of all, one called Tamkeen, Tamkeen. They will do something. They will give you up to $250,000 free money to set up your business. Second, they will also pay the salary if you take local people. You have an option, you get 70% first year, 50-30, or 50-50-50. And then if you train these people, you want to send them abroad, all the training and the travel expense is taken care by Tamkeen. It's a government organization. Let's say you need $10 million to fit up a factory there. They own a bank called Bahrain Development Bank. Will give you up to $25 million for 25 years as an interest rate of 3%. Tamkeen will pay 1.5%, you pay 1.5%. So all this, you don't find it anywhere in the world. The second organization, which you see their logo there, it's called Economic Development Board, EDP. They pave the way for you to facilitate your license, to see any obstacles, to see if you really need it, 25 or 50 million. And the third one is the Sovereign Wealth Fund, it's called Mumtalakat. Their minimum ticket is 50 million. And if you really need money and that factory or that investment in Bahrain will do an impact, they come up with you and put the money as a partner. So this is how you make money, and here you lose money because of taxation. The more you more money, they charge you more in taxation. Where does it go? It goes in wars and destruction.
Yeah, to Gordon's point. And I think what's so fascinating about that, yeah, absolutely. And what's so fascinating about this is actually the greatest enemy to any of us who are in the business of money is our ignorance, right? The stuff that we don't know. We have all these countries that treat taxation differently, all these countries that teach benefits or deal with benefits and any kind of incentives differently, but we don't know. And most people generally start based on convenience and not based on knowledge. Fantastic point. Alberto, add to the conversation, please.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for having me today here. It's very interesting, let's say, events and conversation. So, my name is Alberto Brazzalotto. I'm a partner at Maisto. I'm a background as a tax lawyer. I focus on international tax and private client matters, and I generally advise family offices or wealthy individuals who might have any kind of nexus with Italy. And in the current, let's say, environment, what I want to tell you today, and we can discuss about it, is how taxes could be a relevant element, can play a role in the wealth preservation and in transition of business, on succession planning, and on basically on next generation. And what we basically face every day is clients looking for low tax jurisdictions or special tax regime to save taxes in, let's say, in a way to preserve future generation. And let's say what maybe you are not fully aware of Italy, as I'm Italian, we are in Italy. We can discuss a bit how Italy is becoming a very popular destination for high net worth individuals to find a place to pay a flat tax. And so I can briefly touch the Italian tax regime, which is very helpful for big patriarchal families or for investors. So Italy combines with a favorable tax framework and let's say any other elements like lifestyle, food, fashion. So Italy's Milan is Lake Como is booming of people moving there from several jurisdictions. So this is something that we can address later more.
Yeah, and you appealed beautifully to my greed earlier on, where you said, you know, in Italy, it's just $300,000 flat tax, irrespective of how much money you've made in the year. Like, I'm in California. Does anyone know of the 300 massively high net worth individuals in California? Are they billionaires or very close to billionaires? You know how many have left in the last 5 years? Out of 300, how many would you say are now left? 100. 2/3 of the wealthiest people in California have left. So what the hell am I still doing in Santa Monica? What the hell is everybody here doing in a place which happens to be convenient? Tax matters. Making 10 million, 50 million, 100 million, or 1 million, and giving away 40% of it is insanity.
Yeah.
And so we need to understand our jurisdictions and where the money is coming in from. Tan, no pressure, but you're last. So this is going to be good,
Best for
right?
last.
Yeah, why not? Hi, everyone. Name is Tan Egeli from Istanbul, Turkey, running our own single-family office. I've been an 3-decade-long investment banker before setting up my own family office. And basically answering, first of all, the question of you initially asked the crowd is, I'm on the making wealth side, because I'm the first generation of this family office. Because I believe that first generation usually makes the wealth, the second manages it, the third one inherits it. We will discuss that a little bit later. Now, going back to the question of this panel, I think the loss of the wealth or the money between generations is not due to the lack of knowledge on investment or professional knowledge. It's usually the erosion of the purpose. I think between generations, families lose the purpose.
Okay.
And so therefore they're off track. And at the end, what happens is that you lose the majority of the wealth, which in this case that I heard from the statistics, 70% almost. And going back to other thing that BD mentioned, and after the BD that you mentioned as well, is that the next generations, preparing them. I think succession is not just handover, it is a almost 15 to 20 year education program. It is very important for families. Tax is manageable, as you said, geographically or legally or otherwise. What I look at usually is, rather than the tax, the purpose capital, the purpose of the capital of the families. And for example, I published my book, Legacy with Leverage, in February, just based on this, saying that families should have a specific, significant purpose on their capital, on their wealth. They should be aware why that wealth exists from the first place, why the family made that wealth, and how they're going to continue doing that. Now, the other thing is that we were talking with legal issues. There are two things, for example, governance and then also the inheritance. For me, rather than inheritance, it is a legacy that you pass on. That is the most important thing. And as far as the governance is concerned, I tell to next gen, to my kids, and the number one is sitting there right now, just look, you know, the family governance is not written on the paper, or it cannot be documented. It needs to be done around the family dinner table. Okay, that is the family's core issues, beliefs, and the purpose. So I'll continue later.
That's so
on.
fast. So is it purpose or is it love? I think like if I look around everybody here and people who have made significant amount of money, there's hardly anybody I've ever heard say, yeah, it sucks what I do. Almost everybody loves it to the stage of, if it was a partnership relationship, like that person would most definitely be a stalker. And so it's very hard to instill that on the next generation because it's our love. It's our obsessive love. So I think you bring up a huge point and Gordon brings up a huge point, which is money is a tool. And it's a tool
It's a
that we should
byproduct.
be able to wield.
Exactly, it's a byproduct. I always say that money or the wealth is the byproduct.
BD.
I love what Don said. I mean, everything here Ben said is true, and I totally agree. I heard actually a sentence last week from a panelist at a different conference, and I wrote it down because I think it's worth sharing with this audience and everyone. It says, legacy is not what we leave behind, it's what we equip the next generation to build with. And I'll repeat it one more time. Legacy is not what we leave behind, it's what we equip the next generation to build. And for me, it's really about values, you know, purpose, education, and stewardship. That's really kind of what it means to prepare the next generation. I just wanted to step in on this one and share this because it's so relevant to what Donna said.
Yeah.
Can I add one sentence on that? Very well said, whoever said that. I'll add to that. I think we should not just leave wealth to the next generation. We should leave wealth for the next generation.
Yeah. Yeah. And by the way, like if anybody is worried about the world and how it's dealt with and wars and other people and leaders and everything, this is maybe the first time in the history of the world that we can absolutely control everything. When trillion-dollar companies became normal in Silicon Valley, that meant making $100 billion is actually not that difficult. And with $100 billion, we can change the course of the world. So you have the opportunity to create incredible purpose there. I want to go back over to Olga and talk about something. I think I won the prize of like worst dad of the year because my kid got through high school. I was like, okay, I'm going to be proper Irish. And he got into Loyola Marymount and I'm like, son, I'm so proud of you. You are absolutely on your own. Because it's $80,000 a year. Who knew this, right? Which is like really $1 million to pay, including student loans. And he said, I got this, Dad. And then he goes away and he takes a gap year, which is not really getting it. But anyway, he comes back the next year and he's like, I'm going to go to community college for 2 years and then I'm going to transfer in. And the money I need, I just bought 15 grand's worth of XRP. so yeah, obviously I failed. But like, how do we win? Because part of it is we got to be really tough with our kids to make sure they understand the sacrifices and the despair and everything we went through. And another part of it is we have to equip them with the right way of thinking. How do we do this?
You know, actually only you can answer to this question because the priorities, the values of each family are very different. So, for example, me, I'm not only a lawyer and succession advisor, I'm a mother of 8 children, living across 6 different countries. So, can you imagine the situation when we have 6 different legal systems? We have assets in 7 different countries also. Part of my children are from first marriage, part of my children are from second marriage. So some of them are very, very hard working. Some of them for example, more relaxed, I would say like this. Some of them are participating in family business, some of them not. So where is the balance? And no legal structure, no efficient tax structure, though it's definitely very important, would never answer to this question. So the only possibility to achieve the family goal and not to transfer only money and assets, but also family values and the family itself, because all this succession stuff can bring the conflicts into the family. So that's why in businesses, usually you have very strong corporate governance, but very few families have a strong and working now to have strong family governance, because we are building successful businesses. We spend thousands of hours to prepare wealth for our kids, but we don't spend as much time to prepare our kids to get this wealth. That's why actually most of the family, they lose the capital. And I like very much what Warren Buffett said once, that if you are sitting in the shade, it means that someone planted a tree for you. But it's not enough only to plant this tree. Someone needs to take care of it. So that's why, for me, succession strategy is very integrated system. So it must combine family dialogue and mediation first, to understand family values, to understand how we keep this family fortune for future generations, what are family priorities, how beneficial owners see the future, and how it's correlated between members of the family. Then the lawyers start their work, because if the biggest mistake is when the family succession design is designed by tax advisors and lawyers only. So it's a big combination of financial advisors, family governance advisors, mediators, psychologists, lawyers, tax specialists. So only if we combine all these 6 integrated elements, then we have much better chances to have a result that we are looking for.
Yeah, fantastic. I want to bring you in, Gordon. I've heard Hadi speaking before about the Middle East and how the way to prepare the kids to actually come into the larger companies, you bring them on the boards and then they have ownership and responsibility. Then there's guys like me, where my kid was literally cleaning the toilets of my place from the age of 13, and he still does so today. It hasn't changed. What's your feeling about how do you properly prepare, like bridging between the intellect and the need to do hard work?
I'll try to do this real quick, but what we did is 20 years ago, we formed within the family an incentive program so that we could self-fund the younger generation, because we have 2,700 family members, so you can imagine how many children we're talking about. And we would fund kids for businesses, and I'd make them create a business plan. And I tell them the 7 points of how to create a simple business plan. I actually had them write it out way before using any software stuff. But I wanted them to have this exercise so that they understood that there are processes and how to do things, and what made sense on paper wasn't necessarily reality. But most of these were simple businesses with simple outcomes. And our deal was very simple. We put up the money if I agree to fund it for the family, and then half of it goes back to the family and the other half stays with the entrepreneur. We now have 60 businesses done this way. And within those 60 businesses, the most successful one is one of the kids who said, listen, I'm not even going to finish high school at age 17 because I'm going to start a muffler shop. I said, who are you going to sell to? And he goes, yeah, the Campitellis. What are you kidding me? And because they all lived in villas near each other. He said, they all need mufflers. They put a hole in it every day because they're driving over rocks, and they're farmers. That's where my family came from. So I said, okay, well, we'll do this. And like I said, last year he did 8 million euros, and he was so proud because we got a check for $1 million and he got a check for $1 million, and that was a pretty good business, and it all came from within the family. So it's possible to do this, but in teaching the next generation about wealth, you have to appreciate every aspect of business, and whether it's doing small things like this that could be potentially big things, or other aspects of business that we've done, which we have another kid who's a genius programmer, and he's got all sorts of chat bots all over the planet that do different things. And he made 6 million himself last year. I have no idea what he does, but we got half of that. So we got 3 million euros. And I think we funded him 50 grand.
So you're like their pimp. Really.
Come
It's
down
awesome.
here. Yeah.
I really like. I
Look at all
relate to
these
this.
deals going on.
We could be friends. This is great. Can we switch gears a little bit? Like you lose all of your money tomorrow, you have to start all over again. You have to make the maximum amount of wealth that you can make. What do? Where do you start? You got to choose the business that's perfect for today. You got to choose the methodology on how you build it, and an insight as to how you would do it differently. Hadi, you got it?
I think education. Educate and train your children for the next generation. Give them a chance, even if they are kid, 12 years, 10 years, when they are not in a school, take them there, let them see the business, and build that interest into them, and it will eventually give you a fruitful relation with your family. And then if you find him, he like music and you don't have a music in your organization, create something for him related to music. Okay, then he will develop it. So the education is very, very important. I find a lot of company, they have sophistication but no education. Thank you.
I love that. Awesome. Tam, you lose it all.
Look, after the investment banking years of 30 years, what I started doing was basically the family office's main portfolio is in agriculture. I became farmer. But funny story is that 125 years ago, when my family moved from a Greek island back to Anatolia, to Turkey, they were doing farming as well. So I'm back to my roots. Now, answering your question, everything goes whoops at one day. Next day, I'll be involved in agriculture. Say it ag tech, food security, but agriculture.
Yeah, yeah. People will always need it forever. Fantastic. BD.
I'm going to probably answer your question a slightly different way, because the families that live through generations pretty much view wealth as a tool rather than a destination. So you really need to have the vision how to create it. And that's really where we have to teach entrepreneurship. You really need to have the discipline to preserve it. And that's where you need to understand, what type of things you invest in, what type of things you avoid. And then, you got to have what we said earlier, the value system and the discipline, have that rigor discipline to ensure that you're not destroying it. So at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what field you get into, as long as you're an entrepreneur, you're educated about it, you're going to actually solve a problem, you should be able to recreate it again.
Yeah, okay. I love that. Alberto, I know you're going to be a tax lawyer again. You're going to start another practice because everybody needs help with tax forever.
Yeah. And basically, we always say that Italy is the good place to die. Why that? Because the estate taxes, inheritance taxes are very low in Italy. And especially if you are under the lump sum regime, it's 0% tax. So it's totally exempt on non-Italian assets. So whatever you have outside the country, you don't pay any tax in Italy. If you gift, lifetime gifts, so in case of donation to the next generation, so people come here, they organize their estate planning, they transfer the wealth to the next generation, and they don't pay taxes in Italy. And let's say, in this context, could be also relevant to say that this flat tax regime in Italy, which provides for a flat tax, annual flat tax of 300,000 euro, basically cover any income and gains derived outside of Italy.
Yeah.
So we have major families moving. They live with their wealth outside of Italy, investment portfolios, investments in different businesses. They derive dividends. They realize capital gain with huge exit, and they just pay 300,000.
Yeah.
So it's a
beautiful.
good way. Let's say Italy is an addition of other destinations like Monaco, Dubai, Switzerland. Could be a nice place to consider to move forward.
$300,000 is nothing. And we started with you, Olga, and we're going to finish with you. I'm not going to bring Gordon. We got plenty of time because we're going to hear everything that he has ever learned to build up the family office for himself and also the outside family office. So I'm going to get you afterwards, Gordon. We're going to have plenty of time because people need to learn these things. But I want to finish with you, Olga. You got to start all over again. last one on it, what would you do?
I would probably choose one of creative industries and creative plus AI because I think that AI and technologies in a combination with creativity, it's the future because human beings, unfortunately, are replaced in many industries. So, and the real creativity and technology together, it can be added to any type of business. For example, in our legal and tax also businesses, I think we have lots of creativity, isn't it?
Yeah, I love it. Humans are not going anywhere, right? Reports of our death are greatly exaggerated. Can we have a huge round of applause, please, for our phenomenal panel?
And for our
Come on up,
moderator.
Carmelo.